Hey soccer fans, welcome back to the Feed the Fire podcast. I'm your host Nick, and in today's episode we are taking a small detour from our Major League Soccer coverage to recap the Copa America 2024 tournament so far. Every team has played their first game in the group stage. A few teams have played their second game, and we're starting to see a few little trends emerge. We're starting to see some of the better teams already assert themselves in their group with their goal scoring, with their goal differential. So we're going to take a look at the tournament as a whole, do kind of a survey, 10,000 foot view, what have you so far. And then we're going to get into the USMNT's opening match against Bolivia, and then what we can expect from their second match against Panama. So let's take a look at the scores. The tournament opened up on June 20th with favorites Argentina hosting Canada. I say hosting, they're the home team, but as we know, the games are being played throughout the United States, and this game was at the Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta, Georgia. So Argentina ends up with the 2-0 victory here. This game was a lot of fun. What I'm going to remember about it, though, is my wife had a girls' night. She had all her friends over. They had their little jewelry party. They had their food. She was making limoncello floats. So my sons and I were upstairs in my bedroom, on my bed, on my laptop, using a VPN to change my IP address so I could get multiple free previews on Fox Sports Online, so I could watch this whole game with my boys. That is what I'm going to take away from this. I'm also going to take away how impressed I was with Canada's defending that first half. And despite the 2-0 victory for Argentina, I guess Canada could call it a moral victory, but of course they would wanted to win. It might have been the biggest win in Canadian soccer history if they pulled this one off. But they did need to generate a little bit more offense. They did have some looks, but there was really nothing sustained. There were no long stretches of possession for them, and they were really just trying to shut down some of the Argentine defenders and have Alphonso Davies spring a counterattack and maybe have something happen with Kyle Larin or Osorio or even Larrea, who came on later into the match, to see if they just couldn't find that one moment of brilliance to get a goal and get them back in this game. But that's not what happened, unfortunately. Those things are going to happen when you play better teams, and that's going to be kind of a theme of this tournament. You're going to see just outright better teams taking advantage of teams who have a ways to go to get there. I'll say it. The good teams are taking advantage of the bad teams so far, and the bad teams have not been able to have those moments of brilliance, so to say, or just have that performance that is just way above a level they have ever played at so far. So that's kind of what you're going to be seeing, at least in this first round of matches so far. So again, Argentina opens the tournament up with a 2-0 win back on June 20th. The next day, Peru plays Chile to a 0-0 draw, or Chile, down in Arlington, Texas. On the 22nd, Mexico defeats Jamaica 1-0, and Ecuador falls to Venezuela 2-1. As far as that Mexico-Jamaica game, we've got a Concacaf matchup on the first round of matches here, and I think if you're Mexico, you would have wanted to have a much better performance, at least from a scoreline perspective, if not from an overall performance. This is an opponent you're familiar with, which tends to work in favor of the lesser opponent, in this case Jamaica, but at the same time, I'm sure Jamaica was feeling confident enough in their game plan because of their familiarity with Mexico that they felt they could have gone out and gotten a result, if not a win. But in this case, Mexico takes the 1-0 victory, and they continue on with their group play. Now, Venezuela with a 2-1 victory over Ecuador. I'm not too familiar with how South American international soccer is relative to the rest of the continent here, right? However, Venezuela, I think, would be the favorite. There are a lot of players in Venezuela playing in clubs in MLS, in North America, and around the world who bring a lot of that talent back. Now, Ecuador does have its fair share as well, but I just think Venezuela does have that little bit of separation from Ecuador as the better team of the two, and they do get the victory here 2-1. A good start for Venezuela, because in Group B, Ecuador, Venezuela, Jamaica, and Mexico I would have picked Mexico to be the favorite there, and it would be Ecuador and Venezuela fighting for that second spot. So this is a very good win for Venezuela to separate themselves from a team who would be fighting to advance with them. Now, Sunday the 23rd, the USMNT enters the tournament with a 2-0 victory over Bolivia. We're going to dive into that a little bit later. Also in Group C, Uruguay defeats Panama 3-1. I picked Uruguay to be the winner of this group. I think the United States and Uruguay will defeat both Bolivia and Panama in group play, with Uruguay then defeating the United States in the final matchup. And this is a very favorable schedule for the United States and Uruguay as the top two teams to have their matchup with each other, the third and final matchup of the group play. Brazil, the next day, draws Costa Rica 0-0. And I know I said the theme of the tournament is the better teams beating the worst teams, but in this case, it was Costa Rica grinding out a win, or a result here. I saw a lot of people on social media saying, hey, Brazil, welcome to Concacaf. These are the kind of matches that we play every World Cup qualifying cycle, every Gold Cup, every Nations League, as short-lived as that has been. So they got a taste of what it was to play a Concacaf style, grind out a result kind of a game here. And kudos to Costa Rica for doing exactly what they need to. And do we have to say it here for those of you, the Fire fans in the room? Do we have to say kudos to Costa Rica captain and former Chicago Fire player Francisco Calvo? Red Card Calvo getting it done with his home country. The other side of Group D, Colombia defeats Paraguay 2-1. I'm actually kind of surprised at this result from a scoreline perspective. Not surprised Colombia won, but I'm surprised that Colombia did not put a few more goals in and even allowed one against Paraguay. Now, yesterday, the 25th, Chile falls to Argentina 1-0. So Argentina, not that juggernaut that we would think a favorite in this tournament would be, playing against lesser competition. However, we saw that in the World Cup, where they lost their opening group stage game, had some good results for the rest of the group stage, and then went on to win the tournament. So Argentina is playing a tournament style here. They are not running out their starters for 3 straight games in the American summer here, even though this game was in New Jersey, which hopefully a little cooler than the rest of the country, cooler than playing, say, in Kansas City like Peru and Canada did. And kudos to Canada on their 1-0 victory over Peru. Canada picks up a much-needed 3 points, and it'll come down to their matchup against Chile to see who advances out of that group. I kind of like Canada's chances, the way they've been playing. But anyway, Argentina playing that tournament style, rotating their starters, not going all out for a full 90 minutes, pressing to get more and more goals. They definitely know what they're doing. A very experienced squad here. Now, today's matches, June 26th, Venezuela gets the 1-0 victory over Mexico. I am shocked by this result. I thought, if anything, Mexico would come out stronger in this game, knowing this is now the team that already has 3 points and a win that they need to have. But this was a disaster for Mexico, especially as a soccer country who thinks that they're better than CONCACAF. Now, maybe their players in the confederation, the federation doesn't, but the fans, and I would say a majority of all their players, whether they're on the national team or just playing in Mexico, they think that Mexico should be on par with other footballing nations like Argentina and Brazil, like Italy and Spain. Let's say even like a Japan or Korea or a Nigeria coming out of Africa there, right? Some of these World Cup locks who have these upsets every now and then, but Mexico has failed to prove it over the last several years, both in CONCACAF play and now in Copa America against CONMEBOL competition and CONCACAF competition. Just not getting the results they need. Now we flip over to the other side of Group B. Ecuador ends up with their big victory, a 3-1 win over Jamaica. So Jamaica eliminated, not advancing, and this last group stage game here. Actually, I don't know. Is Jamaica mathematically eliminated? We'll look at the standings in a second. Let's pull it up. Group B. Yeah, Jamaica right now has 0 points. So it is possible if they come out gangbusters against Venezuela and come out with, like a 6-0 win or something like that, where they can get 3 points and advance on a goal differential. Technically still possible, though practically Jamaica is all but eliminated, and we will see how Ecuador and Mexico fare. But that's how Group B shakes out. And then tomorrow, June 27th, or today, if you're listening a little later, by the time this episode gets posted, Panama plays the United States down in Atlanta at the Benz. Hopefully this gives the U.S. a little bit of a home field advantage, not only playing in a soccer-crazed city like Atlanta, but the site of their future training facility and U.S. Soccer Center down there. Hopefully this gives them that little bit of an edge, and hopefully U.S. Soccer's been able to work with the tournament organizers and maybe try to schedule some more friendlier venues for U.S. fans. But you are going to get a game against Panama, and yeah, I'm jumping a little ahead here for a preview. These are familiar opponents, and like what I said before still applies. The lesser team, typically, in these kind of familiar matchups, has a bit of an advantage because they know how to grind down a team. They know the weaknesses to exploit. Meanwhile, the better of the two teams, in this case the United States, they have to play their game knowing what Panama is going to try to do. They cannot get bogged down in that Concacaf tic-tac, cheap shot, time-wasting, arguing with the ref. They have to go out and play their game like the better team. And then hopefully it all shakes out. And then over the course of 90 minutes, the better team wins and moves on and advances. That's what the United States needs to do. They also have to have a much better game than what they played in their opener against Bolivia. And then also tomorrow Bolivia takes on Uruguay at MetLife Stadium in Jersey. And rounding out Group D on Friday, Paraguay versus Brazil and Colombia versus Costa Rica. So those are the first two group stage games there. Let's now shift into what we saw with the United States playing against Bolivia. This was a 2-0 victory. Christian Pulisic gets the first goal in the 3rd minute of the match with a nice assist by Tim Weah, and Falorin Balogun puts them up 2-0 with a good assist from Christian Pulisic in the 44th minute. So the United States takes a 2-0 lead into the half, but does not score in that second half. And we saw Bolivia make 3 halftime substitutions to try to get some fresh legs out there, to try to unsettle the United States a little bit. Fortunately for the U.S., it didn't work, and the U.S. was able to maintain their control over the game, both, I guess, vibe-wise and tempo-wise, but also statistically. And then you saw some later Bolivian subs try to kind of have that last gasp. But the United States did a good job countering with subs in the 65th, 78th, and 86th minute in order to kind of ride out that end of the game. Something that Greg Berhalter and his staff have preached and have taught and have tried to get out of this United States group, that they have to see out games. They have to learn how to close these games out and not just kind of play the same way for the full 90 minutes. Now, looking at the goals, the Christian Pulisic goal early on came off of a corner kick. I wonder if this was a set play, something they've practiced, or if it was just something that Pulisic and Weah had kind of give a little wink nod to. Pulisic takes the corner kick short to Weah, and then as Weah is facing the goal, it comes from the goalkeeper's right side. So Pulisic takes it short to Weah. Weah's facing the goal. Pulisic overlaps behind him as the defenders are drawn out onto Weah, who then just lays the ball off for Pulisic, who takes a little step in and puts it to the far post. Really kind of a simple shot for Pulisic, but the fact that he and Weah recognized that that was what the defense was giving them, and they executed it very quickly off the corner, really shows their poise and their how locked in they were to this game early on, and it really served them well. And as I said, we saw the lesser team try to bog things down a little bit. 3 yellow cards against Bolivia from the 27th to the 31st minute. So you definitely saw how well the United States was taking advantage of their possession. And speaking of that, the United States also leading to their second goal, doing a good job of kind of counter-pressing, getting into some of the passing lanes. Turnover from Bolivia leads to a ball played out to Pulisic, driving at the defense. You have about an even 3-on-3 scenario here, but Bolivia just does not do a good job defending. None of the defenders step up to force Pulisic into an early pass or an early move. He is able to lay the ball off. He is just a little to the right of the goal as you're attacking the goal. So not in a very good position to take on a defender and get a shot off. He lays it off to his striker, Falorin Balogun, at his left, who drives centrally and is able to kind of get the defender leaning the wrong way and puts a left-footed shot to the far post, goes in. I don't want to say it was a lucky shot, but man, there was a very small margin of error for that, either getting deflected, saved, or hitting the post. But he did it he put it exactly in the right spot, and that's what you need him to do. Now, looking at the second half of this match, you saw Yunus Musa come in for Tyler Adams. And we know Tyler Adams is still kind of coming back to 100% fitness after some injuries during his regular season. Weston McKennie picks up a 49th minute yellow card and then is subbed out in the 78th minute. So I'm sure Greg didn't want to sub him out that early, but recognized the need to do that and recognized how Bolivia would probably try to attack him or bait him into a yellow card. Plus, I think it's the 2 yellow card, 1 game suspension kind of a thing, or 3 yellow card I forget what it is in Copa America. But the fact that he's already on 1 yellow card, he's going to have to play very careful these group stage games. Other U.S. subs, Johnny Cardoso comes in for Giovanni Reyna. Ricardo Pepi comes in for Falorin Balogun. That's in the 65th minute, keeping up some of the offensive pressure, some of that counter pressing that the United States is like to use lately. Luca De La Torre comes in the 78th minute for Weston McKennie, and Brendan Aronson comes in the 86th minute for Timothy Weah. And that is how the game ends. If you're into ratings, if you're into player scores, looking at FootMob here, the highest rated U.S. player, Christian Pulisic, with an 8.9. Obviously a goal and an assist, it's going to do that. But not only did he get on the score sheet like that, not only does he have the 2 goal contributions, he had a dominant performance. His off-the-ball runs were sound. His vision to work in his other teammates was great. He was excellent on the ball and really was able to drive at defenders and dictate the pace of this game. Where you saw some of the lower U.S. scores is exactly where you don't want to see them. Weston McKennie 6.6 and Tyler Adams 6.9. So I know Adams only had the first half and probably was not very influential on that game. And McKennie, the yellow card, really didn't make himself felt in this game very much. However, every other player on the U.S. Was at least at a 7 out of 10, which bodes really well. You saw some good runs from the defenders. You saw very, very active Tim Weah and Gio Reyna. Very good work by the United States as a whole to kind of make up for 2 players who are usually some of the best players in the red, white, and blue, McKennie and Adams. Now, again, I would expect the next game to be a little bit more of a grind against a familiar Panama opponent, and we still need players like Pulisic, Weah, Reyna, Adams, McKennie to step up and control the game. I don't see Falorin Balogun, Ricardo Pepi, Josh Sargent, players like that really taking over games. As a striker, they really can't be dropping back and trying to take over games if we expect them to be scoring goals, especially against a Panama team who's going to do everything they can to really play them physically. So we need those wingers and those midfielders to really assert themselves. To a certain extent, we do want to see the outside backs, Joe Scally and Anthony Robinson, sorry, I almost said Miles Robinson. We really need those guys to also help maintain possession when going forward, and I think that will do a lot for the United States to assert their dominance over Panama. Real quick, stats for the U.S. against Bolivia: 21 shots, 8 shots on goal. Defense blocked 7 shots. As a team, 522 total passes at an 83% passing rate. And as you know, something in the low 80s means that they controlled the game, but were also trying to play it forward into dangerous areas with low percentage completion rates. 7 corners, 12 crosses, so they were definitely getting their wingers involved, getting those wing backs involved. Only 1 offsides, which is fine. 3 saves credited to Matt Turner, 5 clearances credited to the defense, 8 fouls, and a yellow card. So an excellent overall performance by the United States against Bolivia, and something that we hope they will replicate to the next level in their upcoming match against Panama. Now let's take a quick look at the groups and see where everyone stands. Group A through 2 games, it's Argentina on 6 points, Canada on 3, Chile and Peru on 1. I expect Argentina and Canada to advance out of that. In Group B, it's Ecuador, Venezuela, and Mexico all on 3 points, with Jamaica on 0. At this point, it's anyone's group. I would have originally picked Mexico and Venezuela to advance out of this group, and I still feel confident that that is what is going to happen. We are going to see in the last matchup, Mexico versus Ecuador. I think Mexico takes that game, and Jamaica versus Venezuela. I think Venezuela takes that game, and we do see those 2 teams advance. Group C, after one match, Uruguay and the U.S. on 3 points, Panama and Bolivia on 0. I don't think the next couple of matches will change the standings. I do think it's Uruguay and United States advancing. Meanwhile, over in Group D, with that surprising result of Costa Rica drawing Brazil, maybe that puts a little bit of a panic into the Brazilian squad, and they come out against Colombia and Paraguay desperate for results, but I don't think that's the case. I think Brazil realizes that they have their final match against Colombia, so all they need to do is beat Paraguay in this second game on Friday the 28th, and then they can just kind of relax against Colombia. Colombia can kind of relax against Brazil. They can play to a draw and make sure they both advance, kind of a thing. So unless Costa Rica can come up with another surprise result or two, I do think this is Colombia's group with Brazil coming out second, which would mean if everything stands the way it is, the United States would face Colombia in the first knockout round in the quarterfinals of the tournament. With that, we're going to wrap up our CONMEBOL Copa America recap to date. I want to thank everyone for tuning in. Remember, we are now on the Believe Network, a new national, I shouldn't say new for us, national podcast network. And as a result, we're putting out a little bit more content, more episodes, shorter episodes, but hopefully that can just continue to feed the fire of soccer content that you all want. If you want to follow along with me on social media, I'm at Glasshouse Soccer across all platforms, or you can email me, glasshousesoccer@gmail.com. We'll be back tomorrow or the next day with our Chicago Fire preview against Seattle Sounders, so make sure you subscribe, like, tune in, do whatever you need to do to get the show. I want to thank you all for tuning in, for listening. Let's go USA!